Austin.
Hannah.
It's episode 27.
It sure is.
And what date does this episode come out on?
This episode comes out on November 27th.
Woo, synchronicities. We love them.
We've mentioned them on the past episodes, and we are just continuing with the trends. This was unintentional, but the universe is aligning and trying to tell us something. So thank you, universe.
Thank you, universe. Austin just watched me do it, but I looked up some numerology for episode 27. My understanding of numerology is that when you have multiple digits, you're going to add those up until you get a single digit. So 27 would be 9. And that actually represents a cycle of completion, but not the end. So it's kind of the ending of one cycle so that you can start preparing to start a new cycle, which I thought was really interesting because we're coming up on about a year of us working on this in the background, and then very shortly after, it'll be a year of when we first posted episodes and all of that. And we have some fun stuff we're doing in the background that hopefully will help us begin a new cycle of success with this, and it'll just keep growing and, becoming what we want it to be.
Hannah, don't you also turn 27 this coming year?
You know what I do?
I was just thinking that. I was like,
Speaking of birthdays.
Oh, God, yeah.
Austin, how was your 30th birthday?
My 30th birthday was pretty fun. It was well needed. It was a good time. We were at a little, what would you call it? Just like a restaurant out of ways, and it was called Devil's Advocate. I've never been there before, but Hannah and Christian have. Would you say like one or two times before that?
Literally just one time.
Oh, okay.
We just haven't gotten back out there.
Okay. But, I mean, it was really good. The food was good. The drinks were good.
Yeah, the atmosphere is really good.
Oh, yeah, it was really, really good.
The staff there is really great, so...
Oh, yeah. I mean, shout out to Gavin over there.
Yeah, Gavin, the manager.
Yeah, he was really great. Showed really good hospitality. Just made the experience made it really well, or really good.
Yeah, so... We had a lot of fun. It was really fun seeing you laugh and just be fully relaxed and everything.
It doesn't
really
happen
nice.
often.
It doesn't happen often, but I could tell that you were enjoying yourself, and it just made my heart so full. It made my parents' heart so full, and I'm sure Christian was equally as happy about it. So, yeah.
Good. I'm glad everyone had fun. I had fun. I was forced to put birthday human stickers on my chest.
Yes, they have stickers. If it's your birthday, that says birthday human on it, so we made him put it on. We were just gonna have him put one on, and then somehow he ended up with two. So
the guy gave me two, and I was like, oh, okay. I will say the other interesting thing that I saw there were these little questionnaire cards to keep conversations going.
Oh yeah, that's right. If you need some social lubricant, here you go. Yeah. That's what the little sign for it said, and so it was riddles and stuff for if you're struggling with small talk or you just want something fun. They had a little thing of riddles for you to do with your group. So yeah. It's a cool place.
It's a different take, and it's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. They've got really good food. They've got these stuffed meatballs.
No, you mean meatball? Well,
yeah, they're so big that you usually just get one, whether you get the spaghetti or the meatball sandwich or whatever.
Big as Hannah's head. Actually, as big as Seamus's head.
yeah. God, can you imagine if it was actually as big as Seamus's head?
I don't know. I'm like, that's got to be... That would be some type of challenge.
Seamus is slightly smaller than a basketball.
Yeah, he's 12 foot round.
He's 12.
12 inches round.
He's 12 foot round.
Yeah.
All right. I can't remember if I mentioned it on the last episode, but because we did the auditorium, and I know I mentioned it there. But that Reddit comment I was telling you about from the National Park ranger?
Oh, that one, yeah.
So I found it.
Oh, you did.
And it was not a comment. It was a post. In the No Sleep subreddit.
Oh.
So, that being said, it is fiction. The rules are a little hazy in No Sleep. Most of them are fiction, as far as I know.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure in their rules, it says something along the lines of, all of these stories are true unless they're not. So I was like, okay.
That's a very vague statement, but all right.
Right. So for the auditorium this week, we're going to do something different, and I'm actually going to read the post, potentially the second part. I know that the rules are of Reddit, or not of Reddit, of the No Sleep subreddit, are that you need to get permission from the poster and all of that good stuff. So I didn't reach out to them. They gave me permission. Most of the writers in No Sleep also ask that you donate to either a charity or to, like, their, like, Ko-fi or something like that. So I threw a little money toward them on Ko-fi. I'll probably throw them a little more once I get paid, just because they are really wonderful at what they do. But that's what we're going to do in the auditorium this week, is we're going to read that and talk about it.
So head on over to Patreon, subscribe, and you'll be able to hear it too.
Heck yeah. I'm trying to think. I don't think I really have anything else.
No?
No.
Well, I have got nothing except for the whole 27th synchronicity that we already went over.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to flip thy coin.
Yeah, it's flipper.
Tails. All right, Hannah.
So, it's a story that's been on my radar for a little bit.
How's it now?
I think it's been on everybody's radar. Nobody specifically asked for it, but I'm pretty sure people want to hear it. So, on Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York, sits a house that's been named the most haunted house in America and called the most evil house in the country by Lorraine Warren.
She did it. I can't wait.
So, before we really dive into it, I just want to note, I did not do a deep dive into it. I have a lot of notes, but I really wanted to focus on the hauntings themselves. So, there's a lot of great documentaries out there. There's one that just came out this year that's actually a docu-series made by MGM, if I remember correctly. I didn't get to watch that one yet, but I watched the 2021 documentary this morning. And I did what I could with the time and the mental energy that I had. So here we go.
Way to go, Hannah.
Woo! So most people are familiar with the hauntings, but the story actually starts on November 13th, 1974, when Ronald Joseph DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family inside the house while they slept.
Of course.
I'm not going to go super deep into this because I thought maybe in the future you might want to comment, or not comment, might do, like, cover this story. We'll just touch on it real quick.
All right.
DeFeo Jr. had said that a dark entity approached him and gave him a gun and told him that he had to kill his family.
I'm sorry, a dark entity gave him a gun?
That's, yeah. Yep. I heard a couple different things, but this was the first one I heard, and it was the one that stood out the most, so we're going with it.
I love it. All right.
A lot of similarities to Velisca. Dark entity, told you to do it, whole family in the middle of the night.
Man.
Really weird. He ultimately pled insanity, and he ended up with 6 sentences of 25 years to life. And in 2021, he died in prison.
Oh.
So
sad.
So a year later in 1979, George and Kathleen Lutz bought the house for a fresh start with their family. Both of them had been married previously, and together they wanted to create a nice life for their blended family. So the kids were Kathleen's from her previous marriage, and George was the stepfather.
Gotcha.
So when they were first shown the house, they had no idea about the murders that had taken place there, and they fell in love. Once the realtor realized how much they loved the home, though, they decided that the couple needed to know the history of it.
Well, don't they have to disclose that anyways?
Not in every state.
Oh, okay.
So they were like, listen, I wasn't sure if I should have told you this before or now, but I'm going to tell you now. And I heard somewhere that Kathleen and George basically asked for police records on it. And as much information as they could get so that they knew that they weren't just getting like a sugar-coated version of the story or anything. But they ultimately decided to move in. They were really unfazed about the whole murder thing, actually. And they weren't terribly superstitious people, so.
Oh, okay. So they're not probably a believer in the paranormal, so to speak.
Yeah, they weren't really unbothered. They were like, I mean, it happened. It's a nice house. It's only $80,000.
I wonder why it's only $80,000.
Yeah, they got it at a very discounted price. It's like a 5-story home.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
So wow.
It's something like that. It's a huge home. And it wasn't terribly old at the time when they bought it either. It was built in the early 1900s, so it was about 50 years old. It wasn't.
Which, yeah, that's not that old, given how the construction or the houses were built.
Plus, that area, Amityville, was known to be really nice. this neighborhood in particular is full of like big houses. I'm pretty sure it was on like a lake or something like that.
Okay.
You know, it was just really good stuff. It was there was good schools, so
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
So they spent some time talking it over with the three kids, and they ultimately decided to purchase the house and move in. And I want to just point out, when somebody asked for Kathleen's initial thoughts on the house before they knew anything, she had said that she found it charming. And somebody in a documentary pointed out, when the devil is portrayed in media and stuff, how is he normally portrayed?
As an evil, ruthless entity?
No. He is normally portrayed. A devil in disguise, I should say.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
devil in disguise. He's normally portrayed as the most interesting and the most charming person in the room.
Oh, yeah.
So I just thought that was very interesting, considering the things we're about to get into.
It's charming. Well.
So when they bought the house, it came fully furnished with the furniture that was left over from the DeFeos.
Oh my god.
I couldn't really find like much about how much of it they kept or anything, so I don't think they kept all of it. I know that they kept some, though, because it was noted somewhere that they did keep the beds that the DeFeo children had been murdered in. So, like, the bed frames. And, like, the headboards and all of that good stuff.
Just no.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be blood splatter on those still. I guess they're thinking nothing a little sanding can't take care of.
I don't know. I know that there was, like, the pictures and stuff from the murder were pretty gruesome and there was blood everywhere, but it was cleaned up, and judging by the wallpaper in a lot of pictures, it was probably re-wallpapered because it was very 70s.
Oh, okay.
In a lot of the pictures from when they were living in the home.
Well, what you don't know can't hurt you, I guess. Well,
Yeah.
unless,
So, yeah, I don't know the fine details about that, but they're very excited for this home.
good for them. Love
Like,
that for them.
Which, I mean, hell, if I got a huge house in a really nice ritzy neighborhood for $80,000 even today, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So after they moved in, things started happening very quickly. They had a priest come to bless the house when they moved in, which was actually not that uncommon.
Really? Okay. Well, I guess back in the 50s,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, and think about it. Every time somebody moves into a place or I move into a place, I do my own kind of blessing
True,
and
you do.
cleansing and stuff. So it wasn't super uncommon.
Okay.
And also maybe just a little extra because the murders had only happened a year before.
Oh my
Please
God.
remember.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
So while he was in one of the rooms, the priest heard a deep voice telling him to get out. He was also slapped by unseen hands.
Damn.
And after he left, blisters formed on the palms of his hands.
Oh my God. That
So
would
just...
be so uncomfortable.
he said he had to go to the hospital for it.
God, good.
So just to rapid fire a couple things. Doors were slamming on their own. Beds were moving. Black sludge started oozing from places like toilets and keyholes. And a wet, green, jelly-like substance would appear on the carpets,
Ooh.
which they could clean up easily, but the next day it'd just appear again.
Ugh.
I also read that there was, like, green jelly stuff, like, seeping from the walls. Like, just weird shit is happening
Yeah.
immediately. The family dog started acting strange. He'd bark and growl at certain spots in the house, which already is just not a good sign. He had never acted like that before. And supposedly he started trying to harm himself.
No, not a puppy.
So I didn't hear, in like the documentary I watched, I didn't hear anything about him trying to harm himself, but in a podcast I listened to, I did, like, he would run to the end of his chain and just keep running in place.
My God,
And
no.
so it was, yep. Or he'd like throw himself over a fence and like, it was crazy stuff. I don't know how true that is, but I wanted to put it in there because animals acting weird in this place is very common.
Oh, gee, I wonder why.
Right. So remember, they moved in about a year after the murders. It was like December when they moved in. They would find fresh cloven hoof prints in the snow leaving the house every morning.
No. No. That's my worst. That's my most irrational fear is waking up and seeing two, like, footprints by my bedroom window and then walking up and walking back. I'm like,
Right.
I don't want that shit. That's okay.
George said no matter what he did to heat the house, it was always cold. And not like it's an old house and it's drafty cold. Like, they would have the heater turned up, they would have the fireplaces going, and, like, as soon as you got, like, 5 feet from the fireplace, there was, like, a 20-degree temperature difference. There'd be random cold spots all over the house. They would, like, have the heat cranked, the fireplace up, and they'd be, like, wrapped in blankets and sweaters and just cold. And specifically, most of the time, it was George, the father, who was experiencing this.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, no.
For driving my dad nuts.
You think? Oh my god, it's warm over here. It's cold over here. What the fuck?
Like, man, my dad goes through a lot of firewood in the winter, but I bet you George was just
got him beat.
He said he burned all the boxes that they used to move. Like,
oh man.
So George would also wake up around 3:15 every night, which on top of it being during whatever you want to call it, the witching hour, the devil's hour, whatever. It was also the time that the DeFeo murders had happened.
Not surprised.
Yeah. He said he'd wake up to the sound of a door slamming, a gunshot, or other noises like music or screaming. So just like, you got a variety. Every night it's something. Pretty much all of them are startling.
Oh, let's see what's happening tonight. Music? No? Oh, blood-curdling scream. Great.
Yeah,
okay.
great. Well, at least it'll probably be another week till I hear that. Oh. Like, you start picking up on the pattern of it.
It's like, okay, 1 week, 2 days. Got it.
Got it. So sometimes he'd even wake up somewhere other than in their bed, like outside or in the basement.
I know what that's like.
And one night, he even woke up to Kathleen levitating above the bed.
Jesus Christ. Yep.
So...
Neat trick, honey.
Neat trick. Can you come back down now? Kathleen would have vivid dreams about the DeFeo murders, witnessing them from Ronald's point of view. Just from step one all the way through.
Full-blown just watching this.
She described it as watching it through Ronald's eyes.
Oh my god.
And she was able to give more accurate accounts of what had happened that night than news, like the news articles and news media could. And everything. And I think it was later confirmed with, like, police documents that, like, yes, she was having these dreams and exactly what happened was happening in her dreams.
Like, you had to have been there to know some of this information.
Right, exactly. Like, she had some of the most accurate accounts because, I mean, even DeFeo at certain points was like, I don't remember what happened. And I don't know how true that is or not, but...
Oh, right.
Other members of the family would also regularly have nightmares that only started when they moved into the house.
Of course. Okay, red flag number, I don't know, what, 20 now we're on?
Well, let's go on to 21.
Okay.
Allegedly, when the Lutz children fell asleep at night, they would, like, end up rolling over to lay in the exact position that the DeFeo children had been found in when they were killed.
Oh my god, what the fuck? That's some messed up shit.
Right? Like, really, really messed up. So the family would watch the garage door on the boathouse slam open and closed repeatedly. And it would regularly take, like, the whole family to get the door to close and stay closed.
Pull!
Right? Like, I've just imagined they're, like, all sitting in the kitchen and it's just, like... and, like, the dad's just, like, drinking his coffee.
Just so used to it by now.
Like, after, like, 10 minutes, like, the oldest kid is like, should we do something about that?
Kids got their friends over. Does that normally happen?
Yeah. It's just Tuesday.
See, you should see tomorrow.
Right. So, one night when one of the sons and George were outside to deal with the boathouse door, they looked up, and in the bedroom window of the daughter's room, they saw a pig head staring back at them with red eyes and large wolf-like teeth, just like... The fuck? Yeah, apparently they described it as, like, almost cartoonish looking. Ugh. Which is somehow worse.
Yeah. Like, what? Why?
So they went up to check out the room.
Of course you would.
Make sure that the girl's okay. No one was in the room. But the rocking chair in the corner of the room was rocking on its own.
Thing.
It was just doing its thing. Kathleen had also mentioned a time when she went upstairs and her daughter was in her room playing and talking, and there was a voice talking back to her. And supposedly she was talking to her new friend she had made, who was a pig, and had the same name as one of the girls who had been killed in the house.
Uh-huh, okay.
So I also want to mention with the pig thing, that's like a really common thing when it comes to like demonic presences and hauntings and stuff like that.
Not goat, huh?
Not goat, no. It's
pig.
A lot of times it's a pig, and another kind of connection to that is that, you know, generally the devil is described as having hoofed feet. So pretty much any animal with a hoof could qualify.
Yeah. Could you imagine a demonic horse?
Honestly, yeah, I could.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I could see it. Well, it gives me like the vibes of like, you know, Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking
I feel like that's not a hard one to make like demonic.
Yeah.
But
nah.
Yeah, apparently a pig is common. Oh, the other connection to it, there's a story in the Bible where the devil or demons were like possessing people, and Jesus or somebody, I guess you could say, exorcised the demons and sent them into a herd of pigs, and then all the pigs jumped off a cliff into water or something like that. So that's another reason why there's like that kind of connection there.
Okay.
Don't quote me on it. I'm not a religious person. I am just very loosely repeating something I heard in one of the documentaries. So, also when Kathleen had gone up and her daughter was talking to her new pig friend, the rocking chair where her friend was sitting was rocking on its own. And then another time, this imaginary friend had gotten the daughter to walk out onto the roof of the house and told her, "You can be my friend forever if you just jump."
Oh, of course you could.
But luckily, her mom found her and grabbed her.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
Yes.
I was ready for you to say, and she jumped.
No, she didn't. She was only like 5.
Oh, no, baby.
Like just a baby.
Yeah.
So dozens of flies would appear out of nowhere. Also very common with like demonic hauntings.
God,
things
just
like that.
I think something's dead in the house.
And on top of it was the middle of December in Long Island. There was no reason for flies to be swarming anything.
And with how cold it gets in that house? Mm-hmm. God damn.
Yeah. So they'd kill off all the flies and they'd go get something to clean it up with, and when they'd come back, all of the flies would be gone. So
Just like that.
ghost flies.
Ghost flies.
Members of the family were also starting to have temperament changes.
Ooh.
So George was a Marine. He was a former Marine. Mm-hmm. And as far as my understanding was, he wasn't terribly strict with the kids beforehand, but after they moved in, especially with the boys, he became very strict and very disciplinary. And yeah, there's just a lot of changes like around that and everything. And that, of course, added tension to the house, which demons and dark things also feed off of when there's negative energies and tensions and stuff. So it's just
Good
like
old
all
demons.
Yeah, it's just like all building up.
Well, isn't like temperament change like in a demonic like maybe like a poltergeist situation? Like this is like the like getting towards the end of it to where all hell just breaks loose.
Well,
or am I missing a few steps here?
You're probably missing a few steps. As far as I know, also poltergeist activity doesn't necessarily mean that there's like possession or like anything like that coming. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you're in a haunted house and shit is happening every day, like regardless, your temperament is gonna change.
Oh, I guess you're not getting as much sleep.
Yeah, in my mind, it's like they're pushing you to that point where you start feeling like you're losing it, and your personality is changing, and then they're feeding off of that.
Yeah,
and
okay,
it's just,
yeah. See, that was making when you were saying, it was making sense now.
Yeah.
Like you just poke them just a little bit.
Right, it's like when your sibling is sitting there and like their finger is like 2 inches from you, and they're like, "I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you," and you just get so irrationally angry for no reason. And Austin's probably gonna do that to me for the rest of the episode now.
I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you.
So at one point, Kathleen had gone downstairs to the basement and moved a bookcase. Now, remember, some of the furniture had come from the previous family. Yep. Behind it, she found that there was not a wall.
It's just a hole?
There was a small room that had been hidden.
Ooh.
It was painted completely red. And it let off a terrible stench.
Ooh.
And the dog had been with her and was not happy about this discovery, and you could not get this dog to go near the room for anything.
As far as that dog was down in the basement still.
I'm surprised the dog was still around. If I was that dog, I probably would have just run away. You're in a nice neighborhood. You would have found a good home.
Yeah, you would have found a nice family. Hey, can I live with you guys?
You would have found a nice, not haunted home. Apparently, the smell had also been present when police first came to the scene of the murders the year before. And one source described it as like New York sewage smell.
Ew. Okay.
Yeah.
Gross.
So not like dead body smell. Because like when I first read that, I was like, well, I mean, there was dead bodies, even if they were fresh when they showed up. But like...
Well, yeah, but like, a sewer smell. Ooh.
Yeah, like just a terrible smell. After that, the weird smell would just like show up in random places in the house at random times. And the family would have to go around the house opening windows because of the smell, but random windows would get stuck. There was never any rhyme or reason.
Of course.
Like, just random ones would get stuck. So one time, the boys were opening the windows, and one was really fucking stuck. And one of the boys finally got it open, and he was leaning against the windowsill with his hands on the ledge. And his brother turned to ask him if he'd gotten it open, and when he did, the window slammed down so hard on his fingers that it smashed the bones.
Oh, no.
Like flat fingies. Yeah.
Ow, that was coming down with some force.
Apparently, the parents, the other son, and a family friend who had happened to be there were all trying to get the window up to free his hands as he's screaming the whole time. And it wouldn't budge until they stopped trying. And then the window opened on its own.
Ain't that some shit? What the fuck?
It gets worse.
Oh, no.
So apparently Kathleen and the son had gone downstairs. She was getting, like, ice from the fridge. She was sitting at the kitchen table with his hands just, like, flat out in the middle of the table. And he saw, like, a figure appear and, like, come through the kitchen, walk through his hands, and, like, sit down next to him. And he, like, blinked, it disappeared, and he looked back at his hands, and they were fine. The only remaining thing is that one of his pinkies has, like, a crook in it. And apparently, like, this son, as an adult, told the story in one of these documentaries.
Uh-huh.
So, like...
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, bro. Here, I'll fix your fingers for you.
Like, I just...
What the fuck?
I can't even imagine. And then it's like, did it even happen? Or... Like, are the spirits making me think this shit is happening and playing this, like, psychological game?
Does anyone who was there remember this story, or is it just him?
I didn't watch the documentary that he told the story
Okay.
but another podcast had mentioned that, like, that's where he had told the story.
Okay.
And everything,
I have to listen to this story now.
Yeah, I think the documentary, don't quote me on this, I think it's called My Amityville Horror.
Ooh, I've heard of that.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
There was also a crucifix on the wall that the family would regularly watch just get turned upside down. Like, just...
Oh.
Yeah, and then sometimes
Great.
the smell would come after that, too. So, it's not exactly entirely known what happened to the family on their last day in the house. But it was only 28 days after they had moved into the home.
This all happened in 28 days?
This all happened, and this isn't even all of it.
Oh
this
my
all
God.
happened within less than a month.
And
they
you
had
still chose to live there?
Well, it was 28 days. They all packed up a few bags, and they left in a hurry.
Okay.
because of this last night that they were at the house. So, it's said that night that the boys' beds... And all this pretty much happened at once.
Mm-hmm.
The boys' beds started levitating and, like, bumping into each other, like bumper cars in the air. And George woke up to Kathleen levitating above the bed, and she had aged into a very old woman, and George was unable to move or reach Kathleen. The boys are screaming. I'm pretty sure there was a door slamming. And it took, like, at least an hour for her appearance to go back to normal. And just as quickly as it all started... It stopped. It was, like, just utter chaos. Like, your wife is floating, the kids are screaming, like, you can't move. And then just suddenly, everything's fine.
That's still just fucking terrifying. It just stops.
Right? Exactly. So they got up. The house phone wasn't working. But, thankfully, the office phone, for some reason, was. I assume these are all landlines, so I don't know why one was... Whatever. They called the priest and told him what happened and asked if he'd come and bless the house again. And he was like, why are you still there?
The priest is asking, get the fuck out.
Right? He's like, why are you still there? Yeah, they ended up leaving. They packed up and they never went back. So I'm pretty sure there was a few different blessings that happened during this time, and then I think at the end there, George and Kathleen tried to do their own blessing, like basically doing what they could, and they were basically standing there holding each other, saying the Lord's Prayer, and apparently they could hear voices, like, very sarcastically being like, no, stop it. Like,
What the fuck?
like, mocking them.
That's some bold spirits.
Right, that's bold. There's a lot of audacity there.
God.
So later they asked a few of George's friends to go to the house to pick up, like, some important documents and things for them, because they were never stepping foot in that house again. It seemed like their visitors never really experienced anything. It was mostly just the family, and then later on some investigators that came through. But the friends grabbed the things they were there for. I think there was like 4 or 5 of them. Grabbed some things that they were there for, and then sat around and had a couple of beers and snacks. One of them even found a birthday cake and had some, and they weren't really sure where it came from.
I'm sorry. Okay.
So I don't even think it was anybody. It didn't mention anywhere that it was anybody's birthday or anything, so I don't know where that came from. So maybe he ate a ghost cake. I don't know. But the friends really didn't believe that there was anything weird happening there, and they were, like, chuckling about it, having beers over it in the house.
You done fucked up.
Nothing happened, though.
So,
They just wrapped up and they left, and everything was fine. They really didn't believe that anything weird was happening. They were just like, yeah, I guess George is a little kooky now. I don't know, like... It was almost like they didn't, like, necessarily not believe George, but they didn't fully believe it.
Well, yeah, because it didn't happen to them.
Right.
That's... What the... Right. Man, this ghost, it knows how to play.
Right. So it was around this time that the media started to pick up the story. A family had just bought this huge house at a great price in a wonderful town, and not even a full month later, they were fleeing in the middle of the night. Like, still in their pajamas, barely packed anything, gone. And I'm not going to get too much into, like, the news coverage of all of this and everything, and this is where we're already kind of getting to the end of it, because there's a lot of back and forth. Like, they had signed, not, like, a deal, but basically, like, something saying, like, we're only going to talk about it in this manner, and then that wasn't working out because they weren't able to correct things that the media was running rampant with, and it was all of this stuff, and then I think they eventually signed a deal to, like, sell the story, and they, like, did some things to come out and, like, talk about it and everything again. So, there was just a lot.
Yeah, I'll say.
But a local reporter reached out to them and wanted to help, especially after their 5-hour conversation where Kathleen and George had told her everything that had happened from start to finish.
Oh my God.
And the reporter had some connections to the spiritual community. Mm-hmm. And got the family in contact with some parapsychologists and people like Ed and Lorraine Warren. And again, I'm not going to go too much into the investigation. I actually, with the little time I had to do the notes, I didn't find too much about the investigation itself.
Okay.
But there's a couple things. So, there were a few investigations that happened. Mediums were brought in, seances were done, reporters came through. Seances seemed to be the most effective, as not much else really happened during the investigations, save for 2 things. There was a cameraman who... He was, like, incredibly healthy, and he had gone and done, like, reporting work in, like, war zones and, like, crazy situations and stuff, and never had a problem. And as he was going up the stairs, he started getting, like, the sensation of a heart attack. And so some people ran up, got him, brought him downstairs, got him some water. Once he came back down, he was fine. So I don't think he tried going back up the stairs after that.
I would hope not.
And then the other thing... And you might have seen this picture. We'll make sure that we get it in our social media and all of that. But a picture had been captured of a little boy poking his head out of a doorway.
Oh, yep. That very famous picture.
Yes, it's a very famous picture. There were no children there that night. There was no animals. It was just reporters, pretty much, that were there that night. And... The people who took the picture confirmed that there was no one standing there when the picture was taken. People who didn't even believe in this stuff, who were here doing, like, pictures and all of that stuff, like, saw this picture. They didn't believe in this stuff. They weren't believers, but they were like, I can't explain that. Like, so it's believed that this is the spirit of one of the DeFeo boys. Apparently, when you look at it next to a picture of the children, they look identical. And this is believed to be still one of the most profound and hardest to argue pieces of paranormal evidence.
I'll say, I mean, that's very convincing.
It looks like a full person standing there.
It
like,
does.
It's not like you can kind of see through them. Like, it looks like there's actually a child there. But everybody who was there that night, which I think it was like 15 people or something, swears up, down, left, and right there were no children. There was nobody standing there when the picture was taken. And there are other pictures of, like, that landing and, like, those doorways where there are people standing there.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, that one is just straight up a child. And, you know, they almost look surprised to see the people standing there.
Right.
So it's just crazy. Like, that picture, it just gets me every time. So, Lorraine Warren said being in this house was the closest to hell she had ever felt.
Oh my God.
And Amityville is really what made Ed and Lorraine Warren, like, household names across the country.
Mm-hmm.
The family ended up selling the house back to the bank and moving to San Diego to get away from everything. And that's pretty much what happened. They did make a lot of money off the story. Amityville actually has upwards of 26 sequels and spin-offs that have been made, which I found out the hard way trying to find documentaries last night.
Oh.
Because everything that came up was, like, a miniseries, a sequel, a spin-off, something like that.
There's so much out there.
There's so much out there, and it is a very well-known franchise. It's done very well. The first movie did great. It was considered low budget, but they spent $3 million on it. They made, like, just from the box offices, I think it was $10 million.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Not bad.
So
I mean, it's a good movie.
pretty good
I like
payout.
it.
So, yeah, that is Amityville. That is our short and condensed version of Amityville. There are a lot of documentaries out there. So go watch some of them. I was trying to find one I watched years ago that had been really good, but I couldn't remember the name of it. It might have been my Amityville Horror that I watched, but yeah, then I watched the one today, which I can't remember. I think it was called Amityville: An Origin Story or something like that.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one too. It's like on Netflix or Hulu or something.
Yeah, I think it was on Hulu. So
Okay, yeah.
yeah, and I'm probably gonna watch that MGM one. You have to buy it, unfortunately, unless you have an MGM subscription.
Of course.
Right. So I was like, well, it'll be cheaper just buy it. So I'll probably do that
And could you
soon
rent
and
it?
watch it.
Or is it just a buy-only thing?
You could rent it, but if I'm like renting it is like $4, buying it is like $7.
Oh, okay. So no-brainer.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
I'm
Okay.
like, well, I'm just gonna. 'Cause what if I want to watch it again?
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So yeah, that's Amityville.
I love that you covered that story.
I've been meaning to for a while. I was gonna do it for a Halloween episode, and then we had all of our weird stuff going on, our little breaky breaks and all that good stuff, but I didn't know.
You sure did, and it was great.
Good, I'm glad. Yeah. Thank you. What do you have for us this week, Austin?
This week my story takes us to Louisiana to potentially find out who the Axeman was.
The Axeman.
Yep.
Yes, I just added this one to your list.
She did, and I have heard bits and pieces of the Axeman. And I started reading more again, and I was like, oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes, I love that Hannah suggested this topic.
Yeah, I can't remember when I heard about it, why I heard about it. Oh, I was trying to look up Lizzie Borden because I couldn't remember her name. And
okay.
So I had typed in Axe Murder New Orleans, and that came up. It was the Axeman.
Axeman.
Yeah.
So without further ado, let's take us back to May 23rd, 1918, where we meet Joseph and Catherine Maggio. While they were sleeping in their apartment, someone forced their way into their home. That person made their way to Joseph and Catherine's bedroom and proceeded to cut both of their throats, as well as bash in their heads with an axe.
Ooh.
The couple was discovered by Joseph's brothers Andrew and Jack, as they lived in the same apartment-style building. When they got to the bedroom, Joseph was miraculously still alive.
Jesus.
But died a few minutes later after being discovered.
Ugh.
Jack and Andrew called the police. Once police arrived on scene, police noted that no valuables were taken, and they also noticed bloody clothes laying on the floor, which police determined that these must belong to the murderer and either changed into one of Joseph's clothes or he had his own change of clothes.
Yeah.
As police started examining the bodies, they found that Catherine's throat was cut so deep, her head was nearly severed from her shoulders.
Ugh.
Police noticed that the cut was so sharp, it was most likely done with like a razor, like the one barbers would use back then.
Oh.
Unfortunately, police didn't do a full search in or around the home, and a few days later, a neighbor found a bloody barber razor in his yard. Oddly enough, Joseph's brother, Andrew, owned a barber shop. And when the employees were questioned, one of the employees said they saw Andrew take a razor from the shop 2 days before the murder.
Well, ain't that just a bitch?
Andrew claiming he wanted to take it home and have a nick honed from the blade. And when Andrew was questioned, he could barely recall the night, due to coming home late after a heavy night of drinking and celebrating, him and his buddies celebrating him getting into the Navy. And Andrew's razor was accounted for. So, with no evidence against Andrew, police released him.
Huh. I'm just picturing, like, the killer just, like, walking down the road and they're just like, I'm just gonna toss this. Or, like, they just huck it out the window right afterwards.
Right.
And that's why it's in the neighbor's yard. Like, I'm just gonna get rid of this. Nobody will ever find it.
So about a month later, on June 27th, 1918, Louis Basumer and his mistress Harriet Lowe were sleeping in their small apartment, which was attached to Louis's grocery store. After midnight, they were attacked in their bed, and the two were not discovered until 7 a.m. the next morning, when the bakery truck was making its normal deliveries, and the store was still locked and no one answered. Police were called, and once on scene, they found the couple, with Harriet being in the bedroom and Louis being in the bathroom. Louis had a gash over his right temple, and Harriet's left ear had been hacked up severely. Think about that.
Temples and ears gross me out.
Such a soft, tender spots. Both injuries were inflicted with a hatchet that was left in the home, and it belonged to Louis. Surprisingly, the two were found still alive but unconscious, and nothing of value was taken from the home. As for the injuries, Louis was left with a fractured skull, which healed. Harriet was left paralyzed on the left side of her face. Harriet decided to go with surgery to fix her condition, but unfortunately died 2 days later after the surgery.
Oh, God, no.
And on her deathbed, she told authorities she suspected of Louis trying to kill her. Louis was then charged with murder and was sitting in prison for 9 months. Like, it just all like, okay, yep.
Weird. That's... What?
Because the hatchet belonged to Louis.
Is that her only reasoning?
It's one of many reasonings of,
Oh.
like, the whole mistress aspect, a scandal.
Oh, a mistress. That's
She was a mistress,
right.
not a wife.
That's
Yep.
right. Okay.
So he sat in prison for 9 months before being acquitted on May 1st, 1919.
Wait, was he married to somebody? Or is this mistress in the sense that he's a bachelor and, like, they're not official?
You got it.
Okay.
That one. Yep, that one.
That kind of mistress.
And after hearing the evidence and statements, it took the jury only 10 minutes to acquit Louis due to lack of evidence and basically hearsay.
Damn.
So we're going to go back to the timeline on August 5th, 1918. In the early evening, 28-year-old and 8 months pregnant Anna Schneider was asleep in her bed when she awoke to find a dark figure standing over her. And the figure started to bash her in the face repeatedly. And Anna wasn't discovered until sometime after midnight by her husband, Ed, who was returning home late from work. Anna then was rushed to the hospital where she was treated for her wounds. She had cuts all over her face and her scalp was cut open deep. While spending 2 days in the hospital getting her wounds taken care of, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl.
Was it, like, early?
And she was 8 months pregnant.
Yeah, so it was a little early. Okay.
It was a little early.
But the baby was healthy.
But she was healthy. Healthy
She
baby
made it.
girl.
She made it through the labor, so that's what counts.
Little silver lining there.
She survived. Just
Oh, Anna survived.
Okay.
Yep. And mom and baby are both okay.
good.
So during the investigation, police noted again nothing of value was taken, and none of the windows or doors appeared to be forced open. And it seemed the weapon of choice this time was a desk lamp, and a desk lamp from the 1918.
Those are hefty.
Yeah, like solid metal,
Yeah.
but appearing very similar to attacks of the last two. So police started to suspect they had a serial killer on their hands. So 5 days later, on August 10th, 1918, we find Pauline and Mary were asleep when they were jolted awake to a commotion coming from the adjoining room where their uncle Joseph Romano was. The girls went to go and check on Joseph and found their uncle on the ground while a dark figure of a man was running away. Joseph had some very serious hits to the head and deep cuts all over his face. Once the ambulance arrived, Joseph was surprisingly able to walk all the way to the ambulance. Joseph spent 2 days in the hospital before dying of severe head trauma. Police investigation led them to find a bloody axe in the backyard and noticed that the back door had one of the wood panels missing and chiseled away, as this would make it easy for the attacker to enter the home quietly.
Oh.
When Pauline and Mary asked if they got a good look at the attacker, and this is the best description that they've gotten of the Axeman, their description was a heavy-set man who was dark-skinned, and at that time he was wearing a dark suit and a slouched hat. After this attack and making headlines all over New Orleans, this had everyone in a state of panic. People were in a constant state of fear. Reports all over the city stating that they have seen the Axemen lurking in their neighborhoods. Some people even called in and said that they found axes in their backyards. But none of these claims made it very far for the lack of evidence to support them.
Well, yeah.
No. I mean, that hysteria, man, it'll get you.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's people who are being killed left and right with usually axes or sharp objects, and you wake up and there's a random axe in your backyard. But, like, also, did, like, your husband just leave that there, and, like, you guys forgot about it? Like, either way, there's an axe that you don't remember being there, it's gonna be a little spooky.
Well, yeah, exactly.
It's gonna put you on edge.
A retired detective named John D'Antonio made a statement stating the individual that police were looking for would be somebody who has dual personalities, who would kill without motive. And this person could be a very normal, law-abiding citizen who would often get this overwhelming desire to kill. The detective would go on to later describe the killer as more of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation.
Yeah.
So about 7 months later, after this last attack, neighborhoods began returning to normal. But on March 10th, 1919, screams could be heard coming from the home of Charles and Rosie Cortmiglia. Rosie was suddenly awakened to find her husband struggling with a large man holding an axe. The man pushed her husband down to the ground, turned to Rosie as she held their 2-year-old daughter, Mary. Rosie begged for their lives. Unfazed, the killer lifted his axe and struck both Rosie and Mary. A next-door neighbor, Lorando Giordano, heard the commotion. He ran over to find Charles laying in a pool of his own blood and Rosie standing in the doorway with a very serious head wound and holding their dead daughter.
Oh my God.
Everyone was rushed to the hospital. Charles and Rosie were treated for skull fractures. Charles was released after 2 days. Rosie had to stay a little bit longer in the hospital due to her injuries. And while in the hospital, Rosie stated that Lorando had committed the attack along with his son, Frank. The two were arrested and charged with murder, even though Charles, Rosie's husband, would profusely disagree with these accusations. The jury did find Lorando and Frank guilty, and Lorando was sentenced to be hung until dead, while Frank was sentenced to life in prison. After the trials, Charles would divorce Rosie, and a year later after the trial, Rosie would withdraw her claims against Lorando and Frank, stating she falsely accused the two out of jealousy and spite.
Oh. Okay.
Following this attack, New Orleans would be filled with fear and panic once again. Police believed all these attacks were done by the same man, even stating he is a bloodthirsty maniac filled with a passion for human slaughter.
That's a flowery sentence.
Very much so. Now, on March 14th, 4 days after this last attack, a local newspaper would receive this letter. The letter starts, Hell, March 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orlanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. The letter goes on to say he is coming for other victims and will send them down below to keep him company, as he is in close relationship with the Angel of Death.
Another very flowery statement.
It seems, what I've caught on is people seem to have a very, more flowery vocabulary back in the early 1900s.
Oh, yes, 100%. And I have such an appreciation for it.
I'm building this appreciation with every story I read. I'm loving this. Towards the end of the letter, he goes on to say that on the night of Tuesday, March 19th, at exactly 12:15 a.m., earthly time, he will pass over New Orleans. But
Earthly time?
He in parentheses, in this type letter, it's stated earthly time. 12:15 earthly time.
Me, when I'm stuck in traffic, texting my boss, and I will be there in about 15 minutes earthly time.
Just got to start using it now.
They're going to be like, why did we hire her?
Because she's good at what she does. So at 12:15 earthly time, he will pass over New Orleans, but will show mercy if everyone has jazz music playing or are in an area where a jazz band is playing.
Okay, wait a minute. So, who's he again?
The Axeman.
The Axeman. Okay. So, how is he passing over New Orleans?
I mean, it's a figure of speech. Passing through.
Passing through. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, because I'm picturing, like, his spirit just, like, zipping through the sky.
But
and, if not everybody has jazz music playing, he's going to, like, rain down with terror.
I mean, he says he's an ether, and he's a spirit and a demon from the hottest part of hell. So...
Right.
I mean, I had to break this letter up, too, and take out, like, little excerpts, because this was a very long letter.
There's a lot to unpack here. I bet you the whole thing is just a wild ride from start to finish.
It is a wild ride, and it'll be posted on the social media in a post. And
I can't wait to read it.
Oh, it's a glorious email, or it's a glorious typed letter. Not an email. They didn't have email back then. So, yeah, the Axeman was very fond of jazz music.
Wow.
And the last thing he writes, to those who do not jazz will get the axe. Signed, the Axeman.
If you don't jazz, you get the axe.
I'm surprised I said that with as straight as a face as I did, because I was laughing every time I read it.
I think that's going to be the name of this episode. To those who do not jazz, you will get the axe. I'm going to get that tattooed on me.
I want it right here.
Just right neck. Across your neck.
It's my credo. Know what I'm saying?
Oh. At least we think we're funny.
Hey, at least some people do. They keep following us. So, come the night of March 19th, everyone was playing jazz music. No matter where you went or where you go, you heard jazz. And after that night, all was quiet for about several weeks. Until August 10th, 1919. Steve Boca was attacked while sleeping by a large man wielding an axe.
He wasn't jazzing.
He was...
I'm sorry.
After being hit over the head with the axe, sometime later, Steve regained consciousness, ran out of his home into the street to potentially find who did this to him. Steve had felt his head, noticed a giant wound. Steve then ran to his neighbor's house, and as soon as they opened up the door, Steve just passed right out.
Oh, God.
Just
nightmare.
down.
That's a nightmare.
But fortunately, Steve did recover from his injuries, but couldn't recall anything from the attack. A few weeks later, on the night of September 3rd, 1919, Sarah Lauman was in her apartment sleeping when someone broke in and attacked her. Sarah was found by neighbors when they went to go check on her, because during this time, they actually had a sense of community, it seemed like, to make sure everyone was doing good and everyone was safe from the Axeman.
Oh, good. Mm-hmm. That's sweet.
The neighbors had to break into her home because she wasn't answering the door and found Sarah unconscious on her bed. Sarah had a severe head injury and she was missing teeth.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Not the teeth. He's taking teeth now?
No, like that axe hit her in the mouth. Yeah. Yeah. During the investigation, it was believed the attacker came in through the window and left through the window by one of the fire escapes. And when police arrived, a bloody axe was found outside on the front lawn of the building. Sarah was also lucky and recovered from her injuries, But just like Steve, she couldn't recall any details from the attack. So about a month and a half later, just before Halloween 1919, on October 27th, Esther Peptone was awakened by a loud noise. When she went to go see what the noise was, she found a very large man wielding an axe running away, and her husband Mike laying on the floor, brutally murdered, with a gash in his head from the axe covered in his own blood. This horrific scene Esther describes with the gash in his head, this was gruesome because there was blood all over the walls.
Oh.
I mean, like, they were covered. When Esther was questioned by police to describe the man, she was unable to describe any features of the man due to how traumatized she was from witnessing the attack.
Yeah, I'm sure. That makes sense.
I mean, your husband's dead on the floor with his blood painting the walls. Like,
that's just horrible.
You're never going to recover from that.
No.
That...
Especially then with the state of mental health care. Like, woof.
Right. And with this attack, this would be the last murder committed by the Axeman. Authorities would continue to work on the case, but it would be all for nothing, as they never found him.
They never found him?
Nope. Just as quick as the Axeman started terrorizing and killing people of New Orleans, he was gone, never seen or heard from ever again. Now, there are some theories out there as to who and why would do these attacks.
Yeah.
With the first theory being that it was a mafia-based attack due to the majority of the victims were Italian immigrants and Italian Americans.
Oh.
These mafia claims did come from the media, like local news sources. Mm-hmm. Police did investigate these claims, but there was a lack of evidence to prove this.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, like, it's the mafia. I don't know nothing about no murders.
Right.
Like, come on.
I don't know nothing.
Another theory states the killer committed these murders in an attempt to promote jazz music as suggested by the letter the Axeman had sent to the local newspaper. Very far-fetched one, but, I mean, man's passionate about his jazz music.
He's obviously in marketing.
And so one of the last theories I found was that the Axeman was a sadist and specifically sought female victims and would only kill the men if they got in his way.
Interesting.
Because a lot of the times it was the
yeah.
wives waking up to find that their husbands were being attacked or murdered.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. Gross.
So that is the Axeman and the cold case, basically.
Yeah.
The cold case of the Axeman.
The cold case is.
Cold case is.
Crazy. I can't believe I've never heard this story before.
Right.
Like I said, I just found it when I was trying to figure out Lizzie Borden's name because I couldn't remember it. And I was like, I mean, yeah, you've got my attention, so...
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, right out of the gate, this is just like, and a murder happened.
And murder.
Like, there's
murder.
no build-up. Like, everything I read was just like...
Yeah, it was super straightforward.
So starting on, I think I said March?
Yes.
Like 1818? 1918, sorry?
1818.
I'm getting my dates confused. See, this is what happens when you turn 30, kids. Your memory starts to go. No, the first attack happened May 23rd, 1918, and ended in, what was that, August? No, not August.
1919?
4 days before Halloween, 1919.
Yeah.
So spanned over almost 2 years, a little over a year and a half.
Yeah.
With two very little downtimes in between.
Yeah, that's crazy. What a wild story.
Right?
Well, thank you for covering that.
Yeah,
that was a really good... It was a short one, but it was a good one.
Yeah, it wasn't it? Like, whew.
Very eventful.
Very.
Both of our stories were very eventful.
Yeah. Oh, good times.
Good times. All right.
So you got that cemetery fun fact, Hannah?
I do have that cemetery fun fact. So this is about placement of burial.
Okay.
So the deceased lies with their head to the west and their feet to the east. This very old custom comes from both the pagans who worship the rise and setting of the sun and the Christians who believe the final summons of judgment will come from the east.
Wow. That's intense.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very...
I don't have much to add to it, but...
No, like, I
always find things like that really interesting. Like the one we had, like, toward the beginning of when we started the show about bodies having to leave houses feet first.
Oh, yeah. It's like, it's always a feet thing. Or not to say that it's a foot fetish.
It's a directional thing.
But directional, yeah, that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, so it's really interesting.
Yeah. I like that.
All right, well, I think we're at the end of the episode. I do want to say really quick, thank you to Christian. He is going to be helping with editing. I'm going to update our little outro thing at the end about that. And, so thank you to Christian. Welcome to the team.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
As if he's not been a team player the whole time.
He's been more than a team player from the get-go.
We really want to get him on an episode sometime, so hopefully one of these days we will.
One of these days we will.
If we actually record in the morning on a Saturday, we should be able to do that.
Oh, yeah. Want to record this Saturday morning? Sure. 9 o'clock rolls around. Hey, can we record at like 3 o'clock this afternoon? Yeah.
Yep.
Which is fine with me. I get to go back to bed for a little longer.
Right, exactly. So
I'm sleeping in.
All right, well, we're going to head over to the auditorium, and we're going to read those Reddit stories this time. So if you're interested, pop over to Patreon. Otherwise...
Do it. It's a giggle and a fun time.
It is a fun time. Otherwise, we will see you all in the next episode.
Yeah, see you guys on episode 28.
Bye!
The Bleeding Grave is hosted by Hannah Slavic and Austin Wenger.
Music by Hannah Slavic.
You can find us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
You can listen to The Bleeding Grave on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more.